Episode 52 of the Interpretation Station is Call to Order. Welcome everybody to a new episode of the Interpretation Station in the Wham Bam Thank You Land format. It's been a while since I've done one of these in Spanish. It's been a good couple of weeks. So, okay, I thought I'd better get back into it. My Spanish-speaking followers, I was worried you might be missing me. You might be leaving me. Don't leave me. Don't go. Okay, so I've got a text that I posted on the Interpretation Station group a couple of weeks ago. It was by Ecuador. It was a round table. It was a high-level round table on integrating human rights perspective. It was to do with combating racism, discrimination, 20 years after the adoption of the Durban Declaration and Plan of Action, the so-called DDPA, as they often refer to it. And this is all in the context of efforts to combat our old friend, the coronavirus. Okay, so I'm going to add a new feature, by the way, to these Wham Bam Thank You Roland episodes, which is at the end of each episode, I'm going to give you a run through of the whole text. I'm just going to do a sight translation of the whole text, just to give you some new other ideas for words. I might throw in some new stuff. I'll just see how it comes to me as I'm doing it. So if you just want to see that, then I guess you just fast forward on towards the end, and you'll see me doing that run through. But if you've got the patience just to wait a bit, I will take you through the text as I, take you through the notes that I did a couple of weeks ago and just say why I included what I included. Okay, so let's turn to the text. Okay, so here we go. This was on the 22nd of February. So the first thing here I pointed out, intervenciones, briefings. It's briefings that I just find is the best word for this kind of thing. I can deal with interventions. It's okay, but as I say, it's panelists. It was panelists who are making presentations. In fact, it makes more sense to thank the panelists for their presentations on progress and challenges. I like briefings, though. Interventions also I tend to use more when it's like a country, when they have the country speaking afterwards in the course of a debate. When it's referring to the actual initial presentations, I like to stick with either presentations or briefings. I would actually say that I use intervention as a sort of synonym for statement sometimes. Sometimes when I'm saying statement a lot, I might say the intervention they made earlier, as opposed to always saying the statement. So I would keep it like that. Briefings and presentations on the one hand, and statements and interventions on the other. Okay, and then aplicación de la declaración. Implementing always much better than applying. Obviously in Spanish they use aplicación, aplicar a lot, but in English we say implementing. In this case, a declaration. Otherwise, I would go straight in here. I'll give you the 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the Durban Declaration and Plan of Action. But you can probably just go straight into saying the DDPA, especially when the meeting is specifically about the DDPA. El Ecuador expresa su profunda preocupación. So when it comes to preocupación, I like being troubled. I like being troubled by things, okay? So I would say here, is deeply troubled by. I don't think you need to say expresses its. You could say, expresses its profound concern, but I think you can just say is deeply troubled by. The perpetual agravamiento del racismo. I think here exacerbation is perhaps the best word. Compounding of racism doesn't sound right. It's just, saying how racism is getting worse. So I think exacerbation here is by far the best solution. Personas pertenecientes a minorías nacionales, étnicas, etc. So I think here you can just say from. You could say people belonging to, but again, it's a bit of a mouthful. Again, this statement was delivered pretty fast. I think I did it myself, I think it was recorded, so you want to keep up with the speaker as much as you can, I guess. So I think I would just say, from, and then you have all these categories: national, ethnic, religious, linguistic minorities. Okay, then we have de las mismas. So this is an important little device to be able to use skillfully, as it were, when interpreting from Spanish to English, because, you know, stylistically, the Spanish will often say this, como toda práctica resultante de las mismas. So the de las mismas here refers to discrimination, racismo, y xenophobia. It refers back to something. So again, if you want to just reflect that in English, you say thereof, and any practice resulting thereof. Similarly, when they say something is happening, when sometimes you use there too as well. You know, if they're talking about laws, resolutions, conventions applicable thereto. If they say in the Spanish, aplicable a las mismas, going back. So yeah, this is maybe harder for English Bs if you're Spanish A, English B. It's just an important, in English to be able to use that without tripping up. So yeah, we say thereof or thereto. Incluyendo aquellas en el ámbito de la salud. Okay, I've just bracketed aquellas here because I don't think you need to say including those. You can just say including in the sphere of healthcare. I think you can just sort of drop aquellas in this case. Enraizados. Okay, so I've said entrenched. That's a good word in English. Okay, these acts are often entrenched in social and institutional structures. Again, maybe the first word that probably would spring to mind for raíz, you got the root there, rooted. You can say it's deep rooted in social and institutional structures, but again, it's good to have a synonym. Deben ser combatidos de manera permanente. So I've tried a couple of new things here. Fought, so these acts need to be fought, countered, you could also say. I often go with combat, la lucha contra something, or I often say to combat. Somehow I feel it's almost cheating when they give you the combatidos and you say to combat. I don't know if other interpreters feels like cheating, taking that obvious cognate. So anyway, I thought I'd give you fought. These acts need to be fought. De manera permanente, you could say on an ongoing basis. But I think that, again, this is another good word here, relentlessly. You got to keep going. You just got to keep up the fight. Relentlessly. Next paragraph here. This word is very particular, I'd say, to Ecuador and Bolivia, because they both talk about, you've got Bolivia, for example, is called the plurinational state of Bolivia. I think that's its constitutional name. And at least previously, when you had the presidents of Ecuador and Bolivia, so you had, yes, Morales, president of Bolivia, and you had Rafael Correa, who was president of Ecuador, and the two of them were very much allies. They very much sort of sung from the same hymn sheet, as it were. So they would often talk about, how their countries were plurinational. Now, I don't know if their successors are quite politically similarly aligned. But anyway, when I hear plurinacional in relation to Ecuador or Bolivia, I will tend to just keep it as plurinational. That's why I put a tick there. Okay. Convivencia de pueblos y nacionalidades. Again, this is something that they're big on, the Ecuadorians. Well, coexistence. That's the standard solution for convivencia, as opposed to, say, cohabitation. That word does exist, but I tend not to really go there much. Convivencia, just stick to coexistence. Okay, then down here, the Grupo de Expertos sobre Afrodescendientes, I put a big asterisk here. People of African descent, that is the exact wording, all right, in English, as I say, but it's also okay to say Afro-descendants. Sometimes I struggle to pluck that expression out of thin air, that people of African descent, and you hear Afrodescendientes, and well, Afro-descendants just comes much more easily to mind. So try and say people of African descent, but at the same time, it's very much forgivable to use also Afro-descendants. And actually, I included a second page here, didn't I, for this one? So I think, and I'm going to just take you through what I put there. Okay, en el marco de la respuesta al COVID-19, again, I'm big on this. I say this a lot. You can just say COVID. You don't have to give the 19, or you don't have to give it the full name. Just COVID or the pandemic, whatever. Se han adoptado protocolos y planes de prevención. So it's important what I've said here. So from the context of what Ecuador has been doing as a state, you're pretty safe to go with we here. So this actually picks up on something I said in one of my longer episodes on one of the tutorials. The last Spanish one I did, it was about Cuba, if you recall, and the whole text I was going through what techniques we can use when you have a clause like this, se han adoptado, where the first thing you have is the verb. It basically starts with the verb, and you don't know for certain who the subject is, what's been adopted. But in that episode, I say that from the context, you can sometimes make a very educated guess as to what the subject is going to be. So this is all about, as I say, what Ecuador has been doing as a state to implement the convention, okay, or the DDPA rather. It's all what they've been doing. They're very much the protagonists in this statement. So again, you can make a pretty educated guess that it's going to be about us, about we. So I think I would usually just go. I'd take my chances and I'd say we have adopted protocols and plans of prevention. You can play very safe and say, as part of the response to COVID, there has been the adoption of protocols and prevention plans. You can do it. It doesn't sound as good. I mean, we sounds more natural in English. We sounds better, but there is, I guess, the slightly safer option. Anyway, it's up to you. Some people prefer playing very safe and going with there has been. Others follow the context, look at the context, and sort of make their decision based on the context. Okay, then down here, planes de promoción de salud y comunicación. So I've given, again, here the 1, 2, 3, 4. These are technically health promotion and communication plans. But again, I mean, if you can't wait for comunicación, if you just want to stick with the speaker, you could just say probably, such as plans for health promotion and communication. And then here we have another word that's quite particular to Ecuador and Bolivia, this cosmovisión. And in particular, it relates to the world view, shall we say, of indigenous peoples. That's, in Ecuador and in Bolivia, the role of indigenous peoples has been very important. It's very valued. And they often talk about, with respect to indigenous people, their cosmovisión. And this is one of those cases where I think I would use the cognate, the cosmovision. I probably wouldn't use it in another context. It's simply in the context when they talk about indigenous peoples. They tend to use this cosmovision. But if you want to just play safe, you just play worldview as well. Sin perjuicio de importantes avances. So in English we probably say notwithstanding. Okay, that's the most obvious solution there. Continuar con los esfuerzos para combatir la discriminación. So again, this is just, you could synthesize this in English. Just say, keep fighting. We need to keep fighting discrimination, as opposed to going, we need to continue our efforts to combat. Again, in English, you can just say that keep. Often when you hear continuando, anything to do with sigue siendo, sigue siendo, whatever, with sigue, keep, in English, is the word that best conveys that idea of an ongoing action. Okay, so in this case, keep fighting discrimination. En todos los ámbitos. So I've given you something that I rarely use on the spot when I have to come up with it on the spot. I'd probably say here, if I was doing it in all spheres, spheres is the first thing that tends to come to mind for me for ámbitos. In all fields. One of my colleagues actually does use ambits a lot. I think that's all right. It's acceptable, but I think this is a really good solution. If by some miracle it comes in all walks of life, especially in this context, we need to combat racism, xenophobia in all walks of life. I think that's a very good, as I say, solution. And then this final paragraph, medidas urgentes integrales. So integrales, just you're best going with comprehensive. That's my real go-to solution for integral. And then contrastar toda manifestación. Again, it's some of these words. There's lots in this statement. You've got a lot of these words to do with fighting, combating, and here's a couple more solutions along similar lines in that same sort of semantic field. Countering and counteracting are two other good solutions there. Okay, so that's taken you through my notes. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a quick run through. I'm going to give you my sight translation of the whole text. Okay, and hopefully you'll pick up a couple of interesting things. So because it's the Human Rights Council, there was a president here. There was as opposed to a chair. So this is how it would sound. President, my delegation is grateful to the UN representatives and to the panelists for their briefings on progress and challenges in implementing the DDPA. Ecuador is deeply troubled by the perpetuation and exacerbation of racism, hate speech, inequality as a result of the pandemic, which disproportionately impacts persons from national, ethnic, religious, linguistic minorities, as well as groups in situations of poverty and vulnerability. My country condemns all forms of discrimination, racism, and xenophobia, as well as any practice resulting thereof, including in the field of healthcare. These acts are frequently entrenched in social institutional structures, and they should be fought tirelessly. Our country's constitution establishes the plurinational, intercultural nature and recognizes the coexistence of peoples and nationalities in the country, fully guaranteeing and respecting their rights. In 2018-2019, my country received a visit from the rapporteur on indigenous people and the group of experts on Afro-descendants. In 2020, we ratified the Inter-American Convention against racism, racial discrimination, and related forms of intolerance. As part of the response to COVID-19, we have adopted protocols and prevention plans for protection and care to communities, peoples, indigenous nationalities, as well as plans to promote healthcare and communication, taking into account their cosmovision. Notwithstanding the headway made and aware of the challenges, Ecuador reiterates its firm commitment to keep fighting discrimination, racism, and xenophobia in all walks of life, while also promoting inclusion and respect for diversity. Finally, my delegation agrees regarding the need for states and the international community to adopt urgent comprehensive measures to counteract any manifestation, direct or indirect, of racism or intolerance. I thank you very much. Okay, so that's how I would do it. I changed a couple of things there as I was going along. I hope you might have noticed. I went with tirelessly, for example, instead of relentlessly. At the end, you notice what I did there? I went straight into counteract any manifestation, and then of course the adjective comes in, the direct or indirect. But you can say it that way in English. I want to counteract any manifestation, be it direct or indirect, of racism or intolerance. So you've just got to sort of think on the spot a bit. So I hope that was useful to you, ladies and gentlemen. If you enjoyed that video, please do, as usual, press the thumbs up button. Subscribe if you haven't done so already, and blah, blah, blah. You know what the rest I'm going to say. It's always the same, isn't it? The LinkedIn group, what have you. As long as you're enjoying it, as long as you're getting benefit, as long as you're learning stuff from this, that's great. So thank you very much for tuning in, as ever, and we'll be back very soon with a new episode. Don't you worry. Okay, everybody, with that, episode 52 of the Interpretation Station is adjourned.
The train is now leaving the interpretation station. We hope you enjoyed your visit